Hi, I'm Dr. Alison Kole, sleep medicine specialist and bona fide chronic insomniac. Welcome to the Sleep is My Waking Passion podcast. Remember, knowledge is empowerment, and if applied correctly, it can help you biohack your way to a better night of sleep, just like I did. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Sleep is My Waking Passion podcast. I am your host, Dr. Alison Kole, and today I am joined by a very special guest coming all the way from the UAE. It's Dr. Sophia Konstantinopoulou. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you sure did. Congrats on that.
I nailed it. Okay, I have a Greek friend, so I feel like I'm extra versed in this. And we're talking about a Greek friend who was my undergraduate roommate. So, hey, Paula, I'm giving you a shout out, girlfriend. So I feel like I've learned a lot about Greek culture from her, which is really lovely. Okay, I digress. So what we're going to be talking about today, guys, is jet lag, okay, and what you can do to help mitigate that. I want to start by saying that Dr. Sophia and I are working with Aura Circle on this episode. So this is a sponsored episode. There is going to be a coupon to get a discount on your mask, which we highly recommend for when you travel. Okay. So let's get to it. So Dr. Sophia is a board certified specialist in pediatric pulmonology and sleep medicine. She actually trained in Pennsylvania. And then she actually ended up in the UAE. I remember, Dr. Sophia, we were just talking about your journey that initially you weren't quite sure how that was going to work. And now you love it. You're doing so many wonderful things there. Congratulations. So she worked at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So a lot of deep rooted training here. And now she's an attending physician at the Sheikh Khalifa Medical City. And that is essentially the UAE's referral center for pediatrics in Abu Dhabi. So this is a very big deal that she's doing. She works as part of a multidisciplinary team. She is delivering efficient, compassionate, family-centered care, and she is the clinical lead of the Aerodigestive program and the pediatric sleep service there where she works. She's also a core faculty of the ACGME accredited pediatric residency program. She's a member of World Sleep Academy, which is just an amazing institution. I had the opportunity to meet Lourdes Del Rosso. She did an episode with me, and it's just amazing all the work that she's been doing. And it's so nice to see you giving back. We're trying to make sleep internationally recognized and emphasized because, believe it or not, it's not just a USA problem. It's really a global problem in terms of people being chronically sleep deprived and all sorts of various reasons where their sleep is so disrupted. So without further ado, welcome, Dr. Sophia. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for this very kind and generous introduction. Thank you. I'm really very blessed to have been not necessarily always by choice, but by such as is life, assigned to different roles and, lived in various countries. But one thing that for sure lies deep in me is the love for pediatrics, sleep medicine as well. So that's what we share in common for sure.
So you recently were on a trip. You went back to your homeland. You went to Greece, correct? You were on holiday?
Correct.
All right. So that's kind of I'm assuming a smaller trip in terms of time zone changes. Is it in the same time zone or are you shifting east or west?
So actually you're traveling west. And so there's 1 hour that is advanced in Abu Dhabi compared to Greece. So actually the collision of jet lag is not as such a big deal as it would be if we were to travel more time zones. So
not too bad to do that relatively small shift. It would be very different if I hopped on a plane from New Jersey and came to visit you where you're at, for sure. So can you sort of help folks by defining what we talk about jet lag? I mean, people just know that they feel like crap either when they're arriving and trying to deal with it or actually returning back home after that trip. So maybe you could define it for folks a bit.
Sure. Just before we delve into it, I just wanted to mention that in general, sleep is variable among individuals. And sort of the notion is that we get about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. There will definitely be people who thrive on less sleep, or so they claim. But I think that's very, very few people that sleep consistently less than 7 hours that technically have the same aptitude and sort of cognitive and general mood that they would have as someone who was getting more sufficient sleep. So that notion that, I'll sleep later because I want to achieve more, I think I should all sort of put it on the side. And I think that in terms of talking about wellness and longevity, I think one of the most important pillars becomes actually sleep, much like has been nutrition and exercise, because sort of the sleep is the pillar on top of which the rest of our lives is sort of built. So having said that, let's say we're traveling sort of westwards. Let's say we're going from the East Coast sort of to the West Coast. So our bodies would be technically forced to stay up later because of the time difference. And actually, that's a thing that our body can do easier rather than the other way around. One way of preparing of this is sort of trying to adjust as many nights before the travel as you can to the time zone that you're going to be going into. So technically, you need about sort of like changing your bedtime into 1 hour sort of per day per time zone. And then the most important thing is once, let's say, you land onto the West Coast, and of course there is, let's say, daytime at that moment, then you want to get onto it and sort of have yourself emerge to the daily activities of the people on the time zone that you're actually landed in. So if it's, for example, a time for, lunch, or let's say have a certain activity outdoors, you'd rather do that and then start sort of building in your daily routines around the time zone that you are in. So when you travel westwards, you're going to be forced to stay out later. And that's something that people need to take into consideration. So they'll get a little bit sleepier towards the evening hours, and that's when they may want to take a walk around the block, or they may want to, for example, do a little bit of lighter exposure to that, or they may want to build in some activity that sort of gets them going until they're actually, it's the clock time set for them to fall asleep. And one thing to think about is that you wouldn't want to sort of put a lot of important meetings and difficult tasks when it's your biological time of sleep. So you want to time your activities around your circadian rhythm, your inner clock, and also the terrestrial clock, so the time zone that you're in.
And that works specifically if you were going to be staying there for a few days, right? So if you are kind of not planning on spending a whole lot of time in that newer time zone, do you change or modify or make different recommendations for those people in terms of the advice you give?
And I think the idea is that if you're going to spend in a place fewer than 2 days, then you try and keep sort of like your own schedule. But this is when the time is crucial to sort of make sure that your meetings and all your important activities are around your consistent time that you've kept. So, you wouldn't be making extreme changes if your trip would last for 2 days or fewer.
All right. So guys, you were hearing it. Number one, if you're going to be traveling and it's a really short time, you're there for a day or two, you're back, you're not spending more than 2 days, just remember to what Dr. Sophia is saying, which essentially is don't try to modify things. But I love that you're giving the advice to also think about what you need to be cognitively sharp for. If you're going for a business meeting, you may want to think about when people are scheduling those meetings. So you could try to be as much on your A game and with it as you possibly can, for sure. The other thing that you mentioned is really trying to regulate your schedule wherever you land, which it's like, as you mentioned, it's a little bit easier to delay your sleep and go to bed a little bit later. I certainly have found that when I visit my friends on the West Coast, I almost feel like I have insomnia because it's almost like I get the second wind because I'm delaying, but then I'm like, oh, now I don't need to sleep hardly at all. So I've definitely found a little bit more insomnia for me personally, but that is just something I accept and kind of go with the flow. One of the other things, and I think there's a lot less data about this, but I've heard people starting to talk about this, and I'm fascinated to see what larger data samples are we going to see a trend, which is timing of eating. So trying to get on the schedule with when you normally would eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, for example, trying to marry that with the location that you're at. Have you found that to be helpful in your practice or your experience?
As you said, we have our internal clocks, our circadian rhythm. So that's one of the forces that we go to bed. We have our rhythm throughout the day. And so this circadian rhythm, they actually have research that shows that there's circadian sort of cells even in the gut. So it's not just a CNS thing, but it's more also throughout the body. So that's why I think keeping things in a consistent way through and through all body function, sleep and routines and meals is very important.
And okay, what if we have to do the harder travel? We got to go east. I've got to go to Europe and visit you. What do I do?
Yeah, it can be a daunting task, I have to say. Important thing is if you know you're going to sort of travel eastwards, and let's say you're going to be on the plane when it's nighttime, you want to get as much sleep as possible. And when you land, you want to be sure that you're wearing your pair of sunglasses so you don't get that bright light exposure when you're not supposed to. You may want to do that a little bit later, sort of midday, so to speak. And this way, you're going to slowly start to go with the flow and sort of advance. Sleeping was harder than the blues. So going to bed earlier when you're not feeling sleepy is harder than staying up.
Are there any tricks to get you to maximize that level of rest that you found out of curiosity? Either be it on the plane or anything like that?
I think very important things in general, the days before travel, I think people should not consume a lot of caffeinated containing drinks, and they should not be certainly consuming alcohol. Because alcohol can actually put you to sleep, but then there's a lot of sleep fragmentation. So even if you end up sleeping on the plane, that sleep will be definitely very fragmented for various reasons, and definitely alcohol doesn't help. And you want to drink plenty of water and sort of have as much as a balanced diet as possible. And other things, you want to be sure that you're taking all your medications sort of weekly, so you're not skipping doses and these things that are very important to sort of regulate other parts of your body, such as blood pressure and whatnot. Another important thing that people have been using time and through, and sort of more liberally in the States rather than in Europe, because in Europe and here you need a prescription for it, would be some melatonin supplementation. And melatonin is a hormone that our body produces, and sort of sleep-inducing hormone. And people take this as a supplement and sort of time it at least 2 hours prior to their bedtime in order to sort of initiate an ease sleep. That can be at times helpful, but people need to be really careful, because if this is not an FDA regulated sort of prescription, then it may be a compound that has a long life, or it may have other contents in it, and people need to be just mindful of that and not sort of abuse it or use it without talking to their providers. And other things that people in general would like to do in order to get a good night's rest would be, or good sleep for that matter, would be to be in an environment that's relatively sort of soundproof, so not noisy, and also in a regulated temperature. So it shouldn't be too hot either. So about 22 degrees Celsius is something that we want to do. So like cool and sort of darker environment. And for that reason, there have been certain sort of direct to consumer, sort of speak devices, and in general there's several applications that people have been using through that help them regulate their sleep and sort of give them cues as to when it's time to change their activity, or when it would be time to schedule exercise or meal or bedtime and so forth. So one of them would be, let's say, the device that we're discussing particularly today, which is the Aura device, and it's a mask that I could actually technically show you how it looks like. And I'm not sure if you have one of your own and you've tried it before. I have, and so it's a mask that's technically very easy to fit. It sort of has a very easy strap that goes just around your head. It's a headband, technically.
Oh, yes, girlfriend. Show and tell, please.
Yes. And then in general, it has like a nice gel to it. So it's very comfortable for all sizes. And there is an option of, and there's a cushion that's very sort of soft. And in general, there is an option of adding a lavender scent to it. So you have that sort of nice smell and calming and soothing activity to it. And obviously there is something that you charge, and there's volume, and there is also Bluetooth. And so you could technically put this either, let's say, on your phone and listen to your favorite playlist, and at the same time, or you could have a certain number of things such as short stories or your guided meditation or guided imagery and whatnot. So or different sounds, sort of like backgrounds and white noise for other people, or different kinds of sounds like rain, sea. So I think it's something to consider. Certainly, if people find it comfortable to sleep with, if I were to travel, I wouldn't just wait till the last minute to try it. I would just see if it's something that helps me. And then if it actually did, then I would just try it on the plane and see how that would work.
And now, a quick break. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Struggling with sleep? Dr. Kole is here to help. Whether you need a comprehensive sleeping coach program, suspect you have sleep apnea, or simply seek a second opinion, she's available for consultations in New Jersey, New York, California, and Georgia, with more states coming soon. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today to find out which visit is right for you at askthesleepmd.com and start your journey to better sleep with a trusted physician.
If you are liking this podcast, if you're finding it educational, if you are feeling more empowered to go to your doctor with any sleep issues that you might be having to address them, please, please, please lend your support. Make sure that you are liking, following, subscribing. I am available on YouTube. I'm also on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The website has launched. So we have askthesleepmd.com to be your free educational resource. We've added many new blog posts filled with juicy information. If you would like to support the podcast, we now have a way for you to donate. This is a labor of love. I truly enjoy what I am doing. It would be inspiring and truly helpful if you wouldn't mind even so much as donating $1 to keep this podcast going, particularly if you really find this free education a good platform for you and a good resource for you. I also have affiliate links for products that I'm a proponent of, such as Quiet Mind. So please check out the website, sign up, and you will get the latest news, the latest blogs, some sleep tips, and just have a great day and keep listening. Okay, guys, sleep well.
I am still hung up, I gotta be honest, on the fact that I can go and request an antibiotic with no prescription, because I've done it in Greece many, many moons ago. And yet melatonin is actually a prescription. I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah. The good thing is actually that we have antibiotic stewardship. So actually no more antibiotics over the counter by your friendly pharmacist or friendly physician. So
what?
That has changed to less in many
countries.
Great. Yeah, but you're right. For, melatonin, I think people hear the word melatonin sort of hormone, and technically speaking, it kind of makes them a bit uncomfortable. But yes, with the right population, for the right timing, and for the right people under guidance, it's something really important.
Now, have you found, you had mentioned something that is the advice that I also tell patients, which is essentially that, you can try beforehand to slowly, gradually try to readjust your clock. I have to be honest with you. I'm like completely non-compliant with that, because I feel like I'm kind of running 100 miles an hour up until the point where I'm actually going to make that trip, trying to get everything coordinated. Have you tried it, and do you find that it's really been helpful? Is it one of those things like do as I say, but not necessarily as I do? I'm just curious.
I think I'm guilty of that as well, because in a fast-paced society as such, I think when you go on vacation, for example, and you have to pack for so many people and yourself, and then make arrangements and give us, finish your clinic notes, make sure everything is all set in the house. So yes, I think that it's harder to do, but I think if for people who have traveling as part of sort of like their routines. And so that has to do especially a lot of data coming from the flight crews and such, and pilots or these global trotters that have to travel and change time zones for business or whatnot. I think these people may be able to sort of train themselves better and get into that routine.
And previously, when people have trouble sleeping, we generally say, nope, you better not nap. And there are times, though, and travel is amongst them, where you might benefit from a bit of a power nap. One of my cheats is all of Dr. Sophia's advice is very wise advice. But if you wanted something where you're like, okay, now I'm going on this trip, I don't have time to ask my sleep doc, what do I do? And you want some more prescriptive information, one of the things that I highly recommend is considering an app like the Time Shifter app. I've mentioned it before. Again, I'm not getting sponsored by them or anything. I've just literally used it, and I think it's worth the investment, especially if you travel a lot. I have found that it's hugely helpful, and jet lag is a temporary thing. So anybody who leaves this conversation, please don't think like, oh my goodness, I don't do any of these things and now I'm going to be screwed. Eventually you do get back to an equilibrium. But if we're looking to shore in that already kind of stressful period on the body, doing things like working with an app that tells you, okay, you may want to nap here. You probably shouldn't have caffeine at this time, but when you land and you're trying to stay up a little bit later, that cup of joe may be just what you need when you land. And they may give you other hints. And sometimes that may include even melatonin when you get light, and start to think about those meal times. I think if you do all of those things, you're going to be set up for success. And again, there is some melatonin in general. We definitely encourage lower doses of melatonin. And it's a little bit tricky about timing, because sometimes you could take it at the wrong time and then you could actually kind of make things worse. So I typically try to use the light and the food and these types of other behaviors more than I do melatonin, but it is there for you if you really need it. You just got to be mindful and try to keep the doses really small, because what we know is when you're trying to move your circadian rhythm around, really tiny doses, like, you can go and purchase up to 10 milligrams, but the probability that you really need 10 milligrams to realign your circadian rhythm there's no real data to support that you need that high a dose.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. I think, yes, I don't want to definitely mention that jet lag is sort of like a permanent situation. It's more like aligning your inner clock, your circadian rhythm with the terrestrial clock, so the time zone you're in. A lot of people, these days have wearable devices that track their sleep. They get very anxious if they didn't get a good night's rest. They often ask me in clinic, I got only 4 hours of deep sleep. My clock says so. My smartwatch says the other thing. And there's, a lot of anxiety on the flip end that goes to, okay, now sleep is important. I really need to get some, quality sleep. How do I do that? And so you end up sort of in this paradox situation where you're more anxious and you're developing a negative association with what should be a natural thing. So going, I think, with your body's flow is very important, and taking, each day sort of as it comes, and following regular, some of these little tips of, good hydration, avoiding alcohol, taking advantage of the light exposure at the right time, and letting a little bit of melatonin at the right time again. Some advice from your physicians, all the persons would generally.
That is such great advice. Thank you so much for that. Now, Dr. Sophia actually talked to you a lot about the unique features of what the Aurocircle mask actually does. One of the other things that it does that I think is really, really neat, because I actually have one of these types of alarm clocks in my home, is it can do a sunrise alarm kind of wake up for you. So I love that, because I think the gradual sort of increase in light feels very kind to me. And I also find that I'm like more alert when I wake up that way. And it's a lot less jarring than the like random types of, phone or typical alarm clock sounds that are just like, you almost feel like you're in a slumber and then you've been startled awake. Like all of a sudden you went from, very quickly to awake, and not in a good way. So that's also another feature that I think would be really cool for you to consider. I personally I always travel with the Aura mask. Like I said, when it's suggested to me that I get a little bit of rest so I can maybe delay my bedtime, for example, which is how I used it when I went to Hawaii for chest last year. That was a really great way to use it. I actually am not a napper, but because it's 100% blackout and you literally can't see anything, that and listening to, I think I was listening to music at that time. I don't think I put on a meditation tape there, but just having that on and being able to sit back and relax, you don't realize that even if you're not a big napper like me, it's amazing that you might actually get a little bit of that really light stage sleep. Like I definitely, after a while, took it off and I was like, I don't really feel like I slept, but I also don't feel like I didn't sleep. Like I actually think I probably got a little bit more rest than I imagined. And I was able to really, for the most part, stay up much later than I normally would. And then the next day when everybody's dying because they're traveling to Giovanni's and going to the North Shore and doing all those cool things, and they're like, oh, I need to take a nap on the beach. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I actually slept pretty well. So there are tools in your toolbox. They are difficult to follow. Would you agree? Like I think sometimes it's really hard to be relatively compliant, but if you do that, it can really kick you up a notch in terms of like resetting you fast.
You're right. I think that, in general, we want to build that sleep drive. So when we are actually pressured, the more time we're awake, the more actually the pressure for sleep is built. So technically speaking, we want that drive so we can fall asleep. And so that's why a lot of people say, please, if you have difficulties with sleep in general, do not take long naps, because that, sort of decreases your sleep drive and pressure. And so for me, the idea is in general that if you must take a nap and you're really sleepy, definitely you should, that you try and limit that nap taking sleep to no more than 30 minutes or so. So definitely this is something to think about, especially when you're a traveler and definitely when you're driving. So we got to be mindful of that as well. So those people who are feeling sleepy on the road.
Yes, ma'am. Keeping us safe on the road and keeping us safe when we travel. Thank you so much. So guys, if you're interested in the Aura Circle mask, Dr. Sophia, I'm going to have you hold it up one more time for everybody to see. You can go ahead, order it on their website, and use the discount code podcast15 to get 15% off. Highly recommend. It's really been super helpful, and it is wicked comfortable, especially on those crazy plane rides. It's not like a vice on your head. It really, really works very nicely. So this has been so much fun, Dr. Sophia. Thank you so much for your time. If you're ever in Abu Dhabi and you need a pediatric pulmonologist and sleep specialist, you know where to find her.
Thank you very much for having me. I think this was a great opportunity to discuss sleep and to discuss jet lag and the importance of regulating oneself and being consistent between, your routines in general, and having technology assist us with that and devices. That would be a cool thing, and I think we shouldn't shy away from it because it's coming either way. Better to be familiar with it because we sure are going to be asked by our patients.
That is such a smart observation. Absolutely. This technology is here, so why not use it? If it's, it's something that you can afford, and I think it's very reasonably priced for all the different features that you get for it, especially. It's really nice to partner with a great company. I agree.
You can try different things, whatever works for each person, so long there's no harm.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Sophia.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to connect with you. Take care.
Disclaimer. The statements made on this podcast have not been evaluated by the U.S. Food or Drug Administration. They are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. The information provided by this podcast should not be used as individual medical advice. While I am a practicing sleep provider, I am not your sleep provider. You should always consult with your personal healthcare provider for individual recommendations and treatment.